Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, it's all about Appalachia, one of the oldest and most mysterious and scariest parts of America. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me, stay hydrated, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. When I was a teenager, I used to go to this youth group. It was every Friday night, and it was in the country, but there were still lots of houses around. Generally, only the kids that went to the church went to it or knew about it. So, at this time, everyone's in the sanctuary of the church, and the band is playing. This old man walks in. He's a stranger. We've never seen him before. The old man looks like he is dead or suffocating. His skin is pale and clammy. His lips are purple. He sits to himself in the back, rocking back and forth and mumbling in what seems similar to tongues, but off. It's weird. The second that he came in and started doing this, the whole vibe of the place changed. We all got pits in our stomach. We wanted to puke, and we became terrified. In the midst of all this mumbling, you can hear his regular voice on top say things like, "I'm so sorry, don't mind me." Everyone is a little on edge. The band continues their set and finishes up, and then they get everyone to start praying. This goes on for quite a long time. I'm not sure how long, until the vibe went back to what it usually is. The guy looks better. His lips aren't purple anymore. The color is returning to his face. He gets up, nods his head, and walks out. After the youth night, my mom was talking with the band about how weird it was, and they were convinced that the dude was possessed. This is a pretty simple and straightforward account of what happened to me and my friends. Short and spooky. Basically, my two cousins, their three neighbors, and myself were outside of Lexington, Kentucky at some campground. There's 6 of us in total. We were making hot dogs on the fire. We were still kinda young, and we don't fully know how to make a good fire, and our fire sucks, to be honest. It's not super bright or hot or anything. But we pass out the hot dogs. My friend says, "Guys, I didn't get one. There's 6 hot dogs in a package, and there's 6 of us. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense then." After some deliberation, I stand back and do a head count. There's 7 people in total. I call this out, and everyone dives into their tents. We come out in a few minutes. Now there's 6 of us again. Still don't really understand what happened there. And I would like to add that we were all alone out there. There were no camps near us. So, I don't know what happened. My dad grew up in eastern Tennessee, and he took me up there as a kid to see my roots or something like that. Now, my dad's father had died when he was quite young. My grandmother had got the land, but my grandfather's family really didn't like this, or my grandmother, so they burned everything down one night, and damn near killed my dad and my grandmother. So, my dad takes me to the land where this happened. It's way back in the foothills, totally isolated. We leave the car and we head to where the house had been. Only when we get there, there's a house that's there, which it would be no biggie, right? It was almost 50 years ago. But then, my dad starts freaking out, saying that it's his house. He remembered the fence and everything. He He named all the rooms. I think he's pulling my leg because he was young at the time, right? So we decide to go knock on the door and see. The house is clearly empty. There's not even a path in the grass leading up to it, and the grass is like waist high. There's no answer to our knocking. He goes around back, and I decide to try the door. It opens. I call inside, but it's completely empty, and as I stand there in the doorway, I'm hit by the smell of smoke, and I feel heat blast me in the face. It gets so hot that I can barely stand it, and I can't breathe. My dad comes back around, and he can see the heat ripples in the air. He comes over to me, and he too is overwhelmed by the smell of smoke. He coughs, he grabs me, and we back away from the house. At this point, we attempted to take pictures, but they didn't develop. And I don't mean that they were blurry or something. I mean they came out as black, nothing. The place is just really weird up in there. I've wanted to go back, but he refuses to tell me how. Southwest Virginian here. The valley I live in is full of crazy stuff. Either that, or I attract the crazy stuff. 'Cause seriously, it's like something happens every 2 weeks that's weird as hell around here. Like this one night, my mom invited me outside to chat around 1 a.m. We both have insomnia, seems to run in her side of the family. We chill and enjoy the sounds of nature for a while. At somewhere around 1:45 a.m., this freakish scream just tears through the valley. Everything, and I mean everything, shuts up while this thing was screaming. At first, I was thinking that it was just the regular Bigfoot scream that you'd hear on a TV show, but as it progressed, it sounded more agonized. This went on for at least a full minute, and it couldn't have been more than 50 yards up the hill from us. We just stare at each other the entire time like, holy crap, is this really happening? It stops, and within a moment or so, everything goes back to normal. All the sounds return. I get up and I drag Mom into the house. There's no way we're staying out there with that thing so close. I really do think that Bigfoot or Big Feet or whatever just move through our area, like migrate around, as I only hear or encounter them about twice a year, and it's always usually in June and September. There have been a couple close shaves, but even when one was less than 10 feet away from me, I didn't feel the level of gut-curdling fear I felt when I heard that tremendous roar. If it wanted to hurt me, I supposed that any one of them would have already done it by now, but I'll be damned if it isn't terrifying enough just to realize how easy it would be for them to hurt you if they wanted to. Now for this next one, I was a bit younger. My mom and my little sister were home. Mom decides that since we're all there at this particular time, that she wants to take us up to this cool spot at the top of a nearby mountain where you can see literally everything around. We're walking up the stone steps, laughing and having a merry time, I guess. Suddenly, something huge starts moving through the woods right next to us. We stop dead in our tracks, thinking it's a deer and going, oh, how cute and stuff. And then, it's on the other side of the steps. How did it do that without us seeing it? I'm looking around frantically, trying to catch a glimpse of this beast. Finally, I do see it just for a few seconds. It looks kind of like a horse, but absolutely giant, and I mean big. We have horses in our fields, and they would look like donkeys next to this thing. It moves like a lightning bolt, incredibly and ridiculously fast for something that size. It runs around us 3 or 4 more times, and then takes off down the mountain, and we never saw it again. And I still think a lot about that one. I've seen some crazy stuff, but it just doesn't seem possible for something of that size to move that fast. It makes me wonder if it really was a horse, or was it just kind of appearing to be one. And here's one more. It's a little short Bigfoot encounter I had. So I stepped outside one night around 12:30 for a smoke. I was standing at the end of my driveway for a few minutes, just looking at the sky. On the other side of the valley, I live in the V part of it. I don't know the exact term of it. I hear 3 wood knocks, and this would be just past my neighbor's house, and it would be the side that I'm facing. I think this is no biggie that they're just passing through again. I stand there for another moment or two, and then, less than 10 feet away, on the other side of a large bush, I see eyes, and out comes a deep growl. Not a bear, not a mountain lion. This was simian, and seemed to say, "Get the hell out of my way." I just kinda clench up and I go back into the house, so I'm sitting in my room a few minutes later, trying to calm down. I hear that same thing at the corner of my back porch. This time, it wasn't hostile, it was more surprised. I looked out the window to see what was going on, and then I hear growling, and then yipping. Then, I see my massive dog chasing Bigfoot across the lawn and off into the woods. Now this cage that my dog was in had a lock on it, so I guess it would seem that this Bigfoot was curious as to what was in the cage and didn't really like what it found. But yeah, those are some stories from my part of the country. So these aren't mine, but my friend used to live in Virginia. He grew up there, and he had a couple stories. He was at his great-grandfather's house with his grandfather, and he talked about how when he was younger, how he'd see little people running around the property, in the sheds, sometimes even in the house, and these people would be under a foot tall. Sometimes they'd be wearing hoods. Sometimes they'd be wearing clothes that looked like they're made out of like sacks and stuff. He was obviously very scared by this, but his great-grandfather said that he lives with them, that they're just part of the land, and to just ignore them. And this is another story from his great-grandfather. Him and his friends were exploring in the woods, and there were lots of old shacks. Some of them even then were being eaten by the forest. The rumor was that they dated back to before the American Civil War. So one building in particular looked a little better than the rest, but the door was stuck. So they spend all day trying to get it open, him and his friends, and they finally do. And there's a ton of old stuff in there. Weapons and stuff. Like a battle axe. And I'm not even kidding. Not one of the double-sided axes for chopping wood either. It's still shiny. Somehow this stuff is untouched by dust or weather. There's no spider webs or anything. Everything there looks like it's fresh. Like it was made right then. But there's like bayonets and rifles that they know are from the Civil War. The kids play around with it. They try to take some stuff. They go outside, and someone notices that there are tall beings, tall black humanoids, up in the trees, and they have large yellow eyes. Everyone sees them. They run back into the cabin, freaked out. They decide that they should just leave everything in there, and they would charge out and run home. But before they do, one of them says that maybe they just saw it wrong. Maybe it's the owners of the property, and they should just apologize. So they step out, and the beings are all gone, but they were up in the branches, at least 8 to 9 feet up. They all ran home. His great-grandfather did return there at some point, but he couldn't find it. All the other sheds were there, but this one was completely gone. This happened when I was about 14 years old, and I was on a family vacation in North Carolina. I had never been outside the dense Florida suburbs before this vacation, so we're driving through the rural mountain roads. The GPS isn't working for some reason, so my parents are just kind of heading in the general direction that the map tells them to. Somehow, we end up driving through this small road that's running through a dense forest. There's not a person in sight, nor a car on the road, except for ours. It seems to be very sparsely populated, and by populated I just mean that there were houses there. Some of them look to be abandoned, and they're very different than the ones that we've seen elsewhere up until this point. They're very large, Victorian-looking homes, looking kind of like something straight out of Disney's Haunted Mansion, but some are super dilapidated. The atmosphere gets kind of creepy. There's obviously something strange about this weird would-be village in the heart of this dense forest. Suddenly, we see a figure on the road, or just off to the side, in front of us. It's kind of meandering on both sides. It walks from one side and then limps along and then goes to the other side and does the same. From where we are, it looks to be a person, or if they're a person, they're really old. They have patchy white hair that kind of covers them. Their skin is deathly white, and there seems to be some kind of gown or something. Whatever it is, it's walking down the road in the same direction as us, so we can't see its face, but the neck is all wrong. It looks like it's broken, or it's all cocked to one side, and like I said, there's a very strange limp or a gait. It just looks really creepy and unnatural. We drive by, and we make eye contact. Its eyes are wide and bloodshot, and they don't look human. They look more animal than anything. It screams and starts sprinting after the vehicle, but it really can't catch up. Besides that, the vacation was totally uneventful, and we didn't take that way when we went back through. It's just weird as hell. So I don't really know why I'm writing this down, or why I'm scared to tell anybody about it. Maybe I'm afraid of dying or something. The events that I'm going to describe happened in 2011 in Shenandoah, West Virginia. I'll start off at the beginning, late September, when my family went to go visit our relatives who invited us to celebrate one of them. Her name is Desiree, getting like $2,000 in some sort of scratch-off lottery thing. They live in this really crappy part of Shenandoah that people from Charlestown, Shepherdstown, and Ranson, the least rednecky parts of West Virginia, call Squalor Holler. It's way up on the mountain, and exactly like how everyone pictures it when they hear about it. Nothing but ramshackle shacks, rusty rebuilt trailers, and everything is covered in decades-old Christmas decorations, because they're all too busy being smelly rednecks to even clean up. Real Deliverance type stuff. Just no rivers or canoes. The relatives we were visiting are absolutely confirmed inbreeders. Everybody's all related 2 or 3 times over. We don't refer to them as aunt and uncle or whatever, just relatives. They're not bad people or anything, just cartoonish and depressingly hillbilly stereotypes. So anyways, we're up here in this godforsaken trailer. It sucks. There's like 8 of them, plus me, my dad, my mom, and my sister. About 2 hours in, my mom takes my cell phone so that I can, quote, focus on family time together, which is stupid because all we did the whole time was eat TV dinners and be forced to watch NASCAR. After like 6 hours of this, and 10 minutes before we're supposed to leave, it starts raining. We know how treacherous the roads can get up on the mountain, so we decide to wait for the rain to die down. Flash forward 2 hours later. It's now dark as hell, 10 o'clock, and there's now a flood warning. I have my phone back by this time, but no reception, of course. I'm playing Texas Hold'em and Tetris on my phone, when suddenly I hear my dad start losing his shit in the next room. I walk over, which isn't very far, the trailer's not that big, and it turns out that they'd let slip that they had to bury a kid, Thomas, outside, and apparently they were afraid that the rain would wash up his body or some other crap like that. The kid was like 6. He was attacked by a dog, and they never even told the cops. They just buried him like he was the family pet. My dad's obviously flipping out, and rightfully so, because, we live in the 21st century and all. So our relatives all say they'll sort it all out in the morning. My parents tell me and my sister to stay in the same room as them during the night, and we do. None of us really suspected that they had killed Thomas or anything malicious, since they're super peaceful people, and they're actually pretty nice. They didn't even own any guns aside from one of those old-timey double-barrel shotguns on a mantle. Nevertheless, we were creeped out, and we intended to tell the cops in the morning once we got back to town. So it was like 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. The power had gone out for the 5th time or so, and I'm not able to charge my dead phone. The worst part is, I could see Thomas's little grave right outside the window, little cross on it and everything. I assumed the kid couldn't have been buried deep at all, since they were so worried about him just washing up out of the grave. So I was just fixated on it. I kept being drawn to looking out the window, and then I saw the worst thing in my entire life. Something was creeping through the trees toward the house. I stared at it for a while, but I couldn't get a good look at it, since it was raining and the brush was so thick. For a few minutes, I assumed that it was 2 really pale horses, kind of ambling through the woods side by side, but then it walked into the moonlight, and I say that it was all one thing, like a weird human torso, but wider. It finally stepped into my full view, and I saw it had something like 6 legs, kind of somewhere between like a beetle's legs and a horse legs. 2 arms, right where someone would normally have them, but they were about half a foot longer than any normal arms on a human. It had a bald head, but the face looked like some sort of bizarre masquerade ball kind of mask. This clenched up, furrowed forehead, and a nose that looked like something straight off of a crow's or a raven's beak. It didn't have eyes either, or none that I could see, just like depressions where eyes would go. It looked like it had a human mouth underneath some kind of proboscis. What still strikes me to this day is that it seemed to have a penis too, like right on the abdomen where a normal person's would be. The thing moved sort of gracefully, and it made these soft thumping noises when it moved, like a thump, thump. It must have been like 7, maybe 8 feet tall, but sounded like it weighed maybe 100 pounds at most. It starts walking towards Thomas's grave, and then I finally snap out of whatever trance I was in, and I scream. My mom is the first to wake up, and I tell her, look out the window. She rushes over, and she doesn't really seem to understand what she's looking at. After a minute though, the thing bends down and starts pawing at the grave with its hands. My dad and Jasper rush in. Jasper just loses his shit, screams like a little girl, and runs back out of the room, yelling for his father, yelling, "It's outside, it came back, and it's outside." I look back and this thing is digging furiously at the ground now, kicking up huge mounds of dirt. I hear these sounds of feet running around the house. I think they were looking for the shotgun. The thing reaches into the hole and grabs up what I assume was Thomas's body by the leg in one hand. The thing then gallops back into the woods, snapping all these branches and stuff, and then that's when we hear it. A kid crying. The sound of a child sobbing and crying from the direction that thing took off in. We left as soon as the rain let up. It was 5 a.m. I think. I don't even think we told anyone in the house. We just hopped in our vehicle and drove straight back to Ranson, only stopping for gas. No one said a word to each other. My family will not speak about what happened. I tried to bring it up once just to make sure that it really did happen, and my dad got livid and told me to shut the F up, so I did. I originally wrote down what happened about 3 weeks after, but I just saved it to a notepad file and left it alone. I never mentioned it to any friends or anybody. I just tried to erase it from my mind by getting absolutely screwed up drunk whenever my thoughts lingered on it. It mostly worked, up until yesterday. See, I work at this gas station in Ranson. From 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. I work the register, keep the place clean, and take out the trash. Yesterday, when I was bringing the trash bags over to the back of the building for the dude in the morning to take care of, I heard what I assumed to be some junkie screwing around in the dumpster. I yelled at whoever it was a couple times to get the hell out before I called the cops. But as I walked toward the source of the noise, I suddenly heard those same footsteps. That soft thump thump. Hooves or feet or whatever the hell they were. I turned right around and went back into the store and hid behind the counter. I look over at the outside security monitor and I see some kind of movement from just off screen. Something huge is casting a shadow and moving. I catch a glimpse of, I don't know, an elbow or something, a pale limb darting in and out of view. I knew, some part of me knew that it was the same thing that I saw earlier. I waited for it to leave, and after a while, it did. I ended up passing out at some point, and I woke up at 6 a.m. that morning to my manager giving me this look like I was a druggie. I went home, and then I found my notepad file, and here I am. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments if you had one. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you want to. And if you sent one in and I haven't done it yet, don't worry, I am going to do it. I just like to fit them in a video with a similar theme. Like if it's haunted houses or cryptids in a lot of cases, if it's, in this case, Appalachia, or if they're all from a certain state, a certain province, or a country. So it will be in a video, don't worry. And also in the description is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way. No pressure though. And what's weird too is I notice in Appalachia they talk a lot about these kind of towns or settlements in the middle of nowhere. And my province is also in the Appalachian region, And yeah, it's the same here. There's a lot of weird settlements and just a lot of weird things happen. There's no real explanation for it. It's just kind of there. And if you live here, you kind of know when to go see what it is and just when to leave it alone. But that's, that's with everywhere. And as for the one of the house, the one that burned down and then came back, there is a building that I know of that I've seen that kind of does the same thing, but sometimes it's just not there at all. Sometimes it's like a pile of boards, and sometimes it's a building. No one can really explain it, but it's one of those things where it just kind of happens, and no one really goes to investigate. But yeah, that's just a little weird tidbit from where I live. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed all the encounters and all the weird goings on in Appalachia. And thank you for pulling up a stump. Make sure to wash your hands, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.